while I was editing this, I decided this was just way too long of an episode to share at one time. So, with that in mind, and knowing that I wanted to get the information out to you guys, I put a lot into it to make it more digestible. This is the part two. Thanks for listening. It's about what people pleasing is and root causes. Does it sound like you or your bestie? If it does, I've put together a list of 5 steps that help me break free from my own people pleasing ways. Now, let me preface this by saying, when something is ingrained into your personality, there is no quick fix, and you're not going to be able to half-ass it, babe. Not if you really want to change. One more thing. I personally don't subscribe to the idea of just pray it away. Like, yeah, you can and you probably should pray about things. A good friend of mine recently reminded me that God only protects children and fools. Well, you're not a child, and you're not a fool either, right? So you got to put that work in. For the first step, you want to cultivate some self-awareness. Now is the time to be so fucking for real with yourself and ask yourself, who would you be and where would you be if you weren't abandoning yourself? Am I doing this to get approval? Am I breaking a plan or a commitment with myself for this? Is this crossing a boundary? If your answer to most of these questions is yes, you need to work on establishing and or reinforcing your boundaries. Before I knew what my boundaries were, I really had to consider what I needed to say no to, and then actually learn how to say it. And this brings us to step number 2, learning to say no. So it sounds really simple, right? And it really should be, and it can be. Take the guilt off of yourself for advocating to put your own priorities first. You saying no is not cruel. Of course, I'm not saying you have to say no all the time, but just sprinkle it in more than you have been. Like I keep, and I'm going to keep telling you because I truly believe life in every area is about balance. So it's not just all no's or all yeses. You have to find the balance for things to just synchronize, and it just flows more, it flows effortlessly. So if you find it's hard for you to do, maybe a polite but firm phrase like, hey, I'd like to help, but I can't right now. Or even something like, let me think about it, I'll get back to you, something like that. Because there's no need for you to pull the trigger. You can share your reasoning if you just want to be transparent, but it's absolutely unnecessary. That is so hard for me, but I've learned less is best, and that no is indeed a full statement. Okay, it's not a question, it's a N-O, period, done. Now you'll be more comfortable saying no and starting to actually say it. You're not only going to be reclaiming your time, like Auntie Maxine said, but you'll also be reclaiming your power. Bringing me to step number 3, setting boundaries. This truly deserves its own episode, so that will be coming. But just for the people pleasing that we're talking about right now, cover it briefly. Now, let's start by recognizing everyone has boundaries. Have you ever tried to put shoes on a toddler? Yeah, even they got boundaries. So now we know that you have boundaries. We just need to define them and make sure that they're healthy. Generally speaking, there's 3 main types of boundaries. So to understand what healthy boundaries are, we'll define each of them, and then you'll know why you should have healthy boundaries. So the first kind of boundary is a rigid boundary. This is overly strict and flexible, often to the point of being unresponsive to the needs of others. Period. Think of a parent where it's like, oh, my way or the highway. And they ain't just saying it, like they'll take the door off the hinges. Like, this is some crazy shit, okay? The second type of boundary is a porous boundary. It's overly flexible or even undefined, making it difficult for individuals to maintain a clear sense of self and to establish healthy relationships with others, i.e., people pleasing. Now, the third type of boundary is a healthy boundary. Can you imagine what's going to make this healthy? Will it be a balance? You bet it is. So, a healthy boundary is clear, it's firm, and it's flexible enough to protect one's own well being while also allowing for more meaningful and authentic relationships with others. Soon, you'll be the example of a healthy boundary. Now, let's get into implementation and setting those healthy boundaries. First, you'll need to check in with yourself. Figure out your own feelings and wants, and most importantly, your limits. Listen and learn yourself. Decipher your emotions and physical sensations. Pay attention to when you feel anxious, upset, or even disrespected. The second step for implementation is that early on you will have to do some explaining or at least informing others, at least those who you care about, of your boundaries, right? No one's just gonna know all of a sudden this is a boundary now. You'll have to be clear, assertive, and remember, honesty without compassion is cruel. So you don't gotta be a bitch about it, but also you telling someone your boundary is not being a bitch. It's about the delivery, right? We're just here to inform you that we no longer going for that big.
Not around here, partner. Not around here. Not around here.
Yeah. So for me, this is also probably the hardest part. Generally speaking, it's hard with those you know because they know you. They know who you used to be and they know how they used to treat you and they know you used to go for X, Y, and Z, but now you saying you don't. Like, who do you think you are? I'm just me, big dog. I'm authentically myself now, and I'm not going to be this pushover, where everything goes. Got rules and regulations, babe. And I tell my friends too, like when we're talking about dating and stuff, I run that like a corporation. Cause why shouldn't I? You think about all the steps and hoops you gotta jump through to get a job. I believe I can hold myself to those same standards. Okay. Yeah. Remember how I said I laugh a lot, and one thing about it is I'm always gonna laugh, right? Well, me being so fucking for real with myself allowed me to acknowledge, and looking inward taught me that while sometimes it's a genuine laugh, other times it's a major crutch and a defense mechanism. I could be sharing important information or even traumatic details, and a giggle will just come out. And it's like, right now in this moment, actually, like, is that me fawning? I think so, because laughing is like, you want, it's less threatening and it's not so direct. Oh my God. Okay, pin that. But to confront that, I've literally had to say, I might be laughing, but I'm so serious in what I'm saying right now. Now, the third step, and in my opinion, the most important, is making these boundaries healthy. You have to offer alternatives. This is what keeps it flexible. This is what helps both parties feel heard. And after all, we're not trying to erect these rigid boundaries, these strict boundaries, right? Notice I never mentioned winning, because in a real relationship, the goal can't be to win. Focus on compromising, more give and take, but everyone walks away with at least a portion of their needs and wants fulfilled. Sometimes it's 50-50, sometimes it might be 80-20. But at the end of the day, everyone's happy. Now, the fourth step of breaking free from your people-pleasing ways is going to be to reframe conflict and what that looks like. It doesn't have to be this dramatic brawl. It doesn't have to be this angry outburst. It doesn't have to be this like nasty argument where you're just saying shit to hurt somebody's feelings. You want to find a method or a phrase that feels comfortable for you and normal for you. I'm probably going to joke or laugh. But in this instance, though, this is like an internal warning of you're about to click out, you're about to click out. Don't click out. So I'm laughing or I'm smiling because now I'm having a whole conversation in my head. That's a whole nother that's a whole nother thing. I've learned enough about myself to know that if the situation isn't funny, that's a warning for me. Like, chill, dial it down, because you're ready to dive out there. And that's probably not what I want to do. But like my girl Nini said, I want to be mindful that instead of competing with the person, reframing actually allows us to go below the surface and have a more meaningful conversation without fixating on the negative. If you can tactfully acknowledge the perceived frustration the other person is feeling, go ahead and do that. But if you know it's like poking the bear, don't even, like I say, you know who you're dealing with better than I do. But it's healthy to just acknowledge there's some perceived, keyword is perceived frustration, because you never want to say how somebody else is feeling because you don't know until they tell you. You can tactfully acknowledge that frustration the other person is feeling. That's great. This can actually help them to lower their own defense and meet you in a more neutral space to problem solve and compromise. Because at the end of the day, the problem is the problem, not the person, unless the person is the problem. But again, another time. That's another time. Okay, love number 5. Oh, I've been watching a lot of Selling Sunset. Number 5 of breaking free from your people pleasing ways is going to be building self worth. Okay, an amazing way to go about turning the outside noise off for me is not only spending time with myself. Like I said, only child, I'm cool with that. I'm so good with that. That is not a problem. It is not a fear of mine. Okay, but I understand everybody cannot afford that luxury, or everybody don't like that, or makes you uncomfortable, whatever. Do what floats your boat, right? But you do want to quiet that outside noise because you need to stop listening so much from the external, right? You need to hear your own self, like really genuinely hear it from yourself. So something that helps me turn that outside noise off is to repeat positive affirmations daily. It can be difficult in the beginning, if you're not comfortable doing this or you've never done it, because maybe you don't necessarily believe the positive affirmation you're saying in the moment, but you should believe. In order for this to work, you have to believe that's true of your authentic self. So even if you're trying to get there and this isn't true for you now, it's true for you here. So it's true. You know what I'm saying? Follow me. Now, the repetition will not only help boost your self worth and your self esteem, it makes sure that you're hearing these positive, comforting words and affirmations daily. That way, if you do hear them from an external source or another person, whatever, it's not this big grandiose gesture. And it's not like, oh, like no one's ever told me like I'm smart before, or like no one's ever said this to me. Nobody's ever been that nice to me, which could be true. But the point here is really that when you're saying these things to yourself, it's not a huge deal anymore because you already know these things to be true. Hmm? So you gotta come harder than that. Um, but now, you won't feel like you won't feel so inclined to please them just for this compliment. And I do just want to drop 2 quick little positive affirmations that help me. And if you like them, add them to your repertoire, add them to your routine. But so one is, I'm worthy of the greatest things in life. And the second one is that I'm worthy of being loved, respected, and appreciated for exactly who I am. Deep. Now you know the 5 steps that help me break free of my own people pleasing ways. Now, allow me to finish the success story, if we can call it that, of breaking free. So, to close the loop on my dad's story, now, although my mom's intentions were great, right? She just wanted her child to have a relationship with her father, her other parent, in a world where anything could happen, in a world where she's a soldier and she's going to trainings and she's getting shipped off and deployed to go do X, Y, and Z wherever. And in a world where anything could happen, right? She wanted her child to have this relationship with her other half, not, for the sake of having it, but also as a security. Okay? God forbid something would have happened to her when I was a child. It was actually making a pretty negative impact on me that would haunt me into adulthood. Can someone hold my hand while I say daddy issues? And what comes with that, like abandonment issues, conditional love, just to name a few. Yeah. Whole nother episode. Don't worry, because that will be talked about. All I knew was every time he broke his promise, it was hurting my feelings. Then as I got older, and I'm the one actually initiating the contact and making the phone call, like ain't nobody calling here. This call is outgoing, right? So now I'm the one finding the number, typing the number in, bebop, boop, bop, call not getting answered, going to voicemail, or it is getting answered and nothing's coming of the conversation that we're having. When I was the one who began to do that, it felt like I was inflicting this pain on myself and I breaking my own heart. So while I'm getting older, I'm realizing, no, he's actually not coming. And it didn't matter how good I was. Whatever was going on was bigger than that, and it's bigger than me. I remember I was like 15 or 16, and my mom, by this time, she would only ask me, like, if I heard from him, if it's like around my birthday or Father's Day or Christmas, like, some momentous occasion. She started limiting on her own how often she would ask me, like, if I had heard from him, and then like if I hadn't heard from him, I should try to give him a call. And it was just like at one of these times when I'm 15 or 16, like in that moment, I just said, like, I don't want to do it anymore. And I told her, like, it was too painful to keep calling somebody who's making me promises, if they even pick up the phone, and they're not coming through, and that person is my dad. um so the older I got, the less of a relationship we had and the less bullshit he could pull. One thing about him doing that is it made me pick up on patterns a lot. Like, yeah, I like puzzles, I like crafty stuff, but reading people and picking up their patterns, that's a skill I learned from Daddy-O. Because it was like, what's the method to this madness and how can I avoid it? That's really what's happening. So I'm learning a pattern, and it's like you're telling me one thing and you're doing something else. Like, I'm good on that to this day. Any relationship, whether it be platonic friends or dating or other family members or even coworkers. If I'm asking you to do something or you're telling me you're going to do something, that's even worse. If you volunteer to do something, you don't do it, goodbye. But if I ask you and you don't do it, why you just didn't say, one, why you didn't say no? Two, why didn't you just inform me when you knew that you weren't going to be able, or even when you thought you weren't going to be able? And then we could compromise and figure out something that would help us both. But anyway, I'm digressing, rambling on about something else. What it taught me and what I ended up, maturing to understand, and what is a fact is people are creatures of habit. And something you can rely on is that a person will be consistently who they are. Now, admittedly, I was sad about it. I'm hurt. I'm distraught. That's my dad. That's at the end of the day, that's my twin. If people know I think I look like my mom, I look like my dad. Like, and now I gotta hear that all the time, all this shit. It's just like also taught me how to disassociate because I don't want to hear that bullshit. I don't want to hear about the comparisons of somebody who do me dirty. Like, it's weird. Anyway, another tangent. Of course, I'm sad about it, but I'm also relieved. I'm relieved from like the anxiety and the angst just around my mom pushing for a relationship that should have came naturally from my own parent. And it also was like when a momentous occasion is coming or a special holiday or something, I also know it's gonna be a little tainted and a little dread because she gonna want to follow up and know if he called, and I'm gonna have to say no. We didn't talk. No, I didn't get a card. No, like why you keep asking me that is bothering me. Unfortunately, I was just relieved from this like astounding disappointment after every conversation and every lie that I was told. Show you how I broke free, like from this situation, is as a teenager. One thing about it, as an only child, I'll I talk through things with myself by myself, right? Because I know I don't have a sibling I can run to. Like I don't have this other person who grew up with me who knows the situation, and I don't know if that's how that works for y'all with the siblings. That's just what I assume. That's just my assumption as a like, someone who didn't grow up in that. It just seems like you have someone there who they don't always have your point of view, but they were there. They have their own perception, but they were there. Like this thing did happen. Now, 5 steps in this story. First, I got real with myself on how it made me feel. She keeps asking me, is my dad checking up on me, reaching out to me, even on a special occasion? Obviously, it's not going to just be the random phone calls and letters, but like, damn, is it on your birthday at least hit you up or Christmas? You heard from? The second step, I had to build the courage to actually tell my mom, no, that ain't the way, baby. Ain't no knowing here. No, but it it's practically unheard of, like especially from a young child to a parent level. Like I'm asking you, like to ask your parent to stop doing something because it's bothering you. You know how quick that can go to like, well, get the fuck out of here, or like you don't pay no rent, you don't pay no bills here, like all that type of thing, just because you're uncomfortable, something makes you uncomfortable. But in that situation, I found the courage to do that. And my no was essentially asking her to stop asking me. Now, the third step, I had to set a healthy boundary. And the healthy boundary was that I would share with my mom when I heard from him, when he called, wrote, whatever. I would tell her when that happened so she wouldn't have to ask me. And then it put me in my feelings and in my mood. We compromised on that because through that conversation, she realized, whatever she might have thought the effects were on me, now she knows because I told her what it is. After I told her that, it was kind of like, not like in a disrespectful sense, but I was more comfortable with letting her know if something made me uncomfortable, just sharing and just telling her how I felt about things, honestly. And that sometimes was good, sometimes be bad. But either way it goes, she knew. Like it's the transparency in it all, right? So by her knowing some things, she would know off the rip. Back to breaking free. Step number 4 in this scenario, I attempted to reframe by informing my mom that by her continuously asking me, I heard from him, have I called him, has he called me? By her asking me that was almost like keep opening a wound. and it's never going to scab over. At this point, I've understood what it is, and I wanted her to understand what it is. Even I'm sure she knew, but my mom was just a hopeful person. She's just a positive person. And my mom was just really extremely hopeful, positive person, especially of others. Like she always hoped to work out for you because she went through things. And it's like when you go through things, you don't want other people to experience that. So you just want to see them win. Oh, wow. Mm-mm-mm. This was a point of view she didn't necessarily have growing up in a two-parent household. She never really had to deal with the separation of a parent and child for this extended amount of time, this loss of communication, this no contact for so long. She just can't relate. You can imagine, but you can't really relate. The fifth step of breaking free in this scenario kind of happened much later. Like it didn't happen, and it probably, in most cases, it doesn't happen like in the moment, like you're trying to do this. It'll happen when it happens. It takes time because, as you remember, the fifth step was rebuilding their self-worth. I was a child, and growing up a people pleaser with a people pleaser parent, my mom's methods are like, some of them are becoming mine, or I'm leaning into that. Like, so I want to be hopeful. I don't want to think about it, but if he reach out, he reach out. Hope so, but stop asking me about that. So it took time just a few years ago, and it probably was the hardest part. I had to learn my true value and my own self worth. Like, it could not depend on how others felt about me or how they treated me, even if it's my own flesh and blood. Like, even if it's the other half of how I even got here. So, if I could separate that from a parent, it's easier for me to separate it from a friend or another relative or a coworker or associate, whatever the case may be. There's hierarchy, right? You ain't bring me in this world like that did, and still I could separate the two. So that is how that story ended up. Now, let me remind you, I didn't realize I was doing those things in the moment, but looking back, I'm able to see now that, yeah, I actually did do this. All right, here's the recap. We discussed what people pleasing is, the associated costs, and some possible roots of people pleasing. We also talked about why it's important for you to know who you are and how healthy boundaries allow you to maintain a safe space for you to be your true, authentic self. If you can relate to this people pleasing behavior, I really hope that you'll commit to breaking free, at least for your future self. Even if you just try one of the 5 steps of breaking free from those people pleasing ways, feel free to reach out and let me know how that goes. And I wish you all the best, and you have all my encouragement for that, because I know how hard that is, how hard it can be. And just know that you're not alone. I'm trying to build a community of like-minded individuals who just want to know why. Like, we just got questions and we just want to know answers. That's it. That's all. But just a little something extra for the reader babes who may be listening. Check out these books that helped me change my whole people pleasing approach. The first one is going to be The Disease to Please by Harriet Breaker. It's heavy on the psychology of people pleasing and how to overcome it. The second book is Boundary Boss by psychotherapist Terry Cole. She focuses on a specific set of skills that help you stop abandoning yourself for the sake of others without the guilt and the drama. She shares tips to consciously control every aspect of your life. As we come to a close, if you do nothing else, please just consider that people pleasing may feel like the safe route when that's your norm. but it often comes at the expense of your own well being and sometimes even your life, especially if you're a woman. Saying no isn't selfish, it's self care. And prioritizing your own needs allows you to show up more authentically in your relationships and have a more fulfilling life. Next time, we'll focus on the beauty in being your authentic self. Okay? So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. And don't forget to share, like, and to chime in. All right, take care of yourself because you deserve it. Got it, top, body, till I ever ask you to take me to go shopping in Paris or go sailing overseas and just drape me in Gucci, no. Body, got it, top, body, till I ever ask you to take me to go shopping in